What's up, everybody? This is the Money Perspective. My name is Brandon.
I'm Eduardo.
And today we're going to be talking about this video that I saw recently. And I wanted to share it with Eduardo so we could have a conversation about it. And that is a video of somebody named Destiny. He's a streamer. And I think another streamer named Jedediah. They're on the screen back there. And this is it's a 2 hour long conversation. But the part that we're going to focus on that has to do with the money perspective is this debate that they're having about, I think something we touched on before, which is how much money do you need to be happy?
Right.
And specifically, she's making the case that you should be striving for more. And he's making the case that it's not so much about like striving for more money. There's kind of limits on that. Right. So you and I just watched this video.
Because we know that money does solve problems.
No, past a certain point, money absolutely does not solve your problem.
Past a certain point.
Past like 85K a year, your life is not.
That's garbage.
You're making arguments that money can improve your life. I agree, but it improves your life in the margins.
What are your initial thoughts on it?
Well, I think that Destiny makes some good points. You know, there's the people that are happy and content with what they have, and it might not be a wealthy salary per year, you know, but I lean, and I think I always have leaned more toward Jedediah's perspective of strive for more.
Okay.
For sure.
I think some of the specific things that they mentioned was they brought up this idea of making like $70,000 or $80,000 per year. And on Destiny's side of the argument, he was saying that if you're making that amount of money and you're not happy, that something beyond money is the problem.
Yes, sir.
And her counter to that was, no, more money could help solve their problems.
Was that her counter?
That's what I kind of took from it. Maybe that's just me, though.
Because there was a point where Destiny did say, if you're making 20,000 a year, I wrote it down here, this speech is not for you.
Right.
Right. And I think in that point of the conversation, he was referring to, if you're making 20K a year, you're probably not happy, and you're probably not even listening to this conversation right now.
Yeah, and some of that unhappiness is more likely to be the result of lack of money. So I think he brought that up actually because, they were having this conversation, and I feel like he was trying to be more nuanced in the sense that he was saying like, yeah, I agree. Money helps solve problems. But as he said in the beginning, like it's on the margins, which is the way that he put it. So money helps to solve your problems. It helps put your kids in better schools. It helps you make sure that you always have food on your table. But I think his point was, so long as you're meeting your basic needs, you have shelter, you have food, you've got some education, you've got like basic things in life, then striving for more and more money at the cost of all else is detrimental. And she kind of at some point brought up like, no, money helps. Like, if you don't have food, you're going to be suffering. And he's like, I know, I'm agreeing to that. That's why I said, if you're only making 20K a year, this is not for you. Because yes, totally. You're having trouble putting food on the table. That is a big issue.
Yeah.
But that's not where he was coming from.
I also, I think that the reason that I have always agreed with the mindset of strive for more is because I didn't come from more, and I think my heart is set on that because not only was I not not only did I not grow up in an affluent community, but I also felt that I didn't have opportunities that a lot of other people did. And I wanted to place myself in places where I did have opportunities that I didn't have growing up, right? So I think that the money perspective is a perfect way to talk about this topic,
Right.
because if you and I can both agree to not discuss the matter of happiness and family and happiness and emotion and things like that come from outside of money, I think we could have a pretty good conversation about it. What do you think?
Wait, say that again. If we can agree to not talk about those things?
Right, because I feel like it's almost two different topics, right? Like the first topic being, Destiny's point of money will bring happiness up to a certain point. After a certain point, and maybe that point is 80K, right? Nobody knows. At some point, let's say you reach 80K, you have to start giving time to your family and to the people around you, in order for you to continue being happy,
Right.
or live a successful emotional life in that sense, right? What I'm saying is, if we can focus this conversation specifically, on the topic of how much can money actually bring to your life, I think we can have a pretty good direct conversation about it.
Okay.
What do you think?
Yeah, no, I think that's kind of what they were debating about. How much money can contribute to your life and if there are any limits to that.
Right, but Destiny brought in being happy with family, right?
Right.
And I guess what I'm saying is, maybe let's not do that in our conversation.
Well, I think the point that he was trying to make is at some point you need to think about like being happy with your family and how that is separate from money. Because she, like, the reason he brought that up is because she seems to be, at least from my perspective, conflating the two. Like, your happiness with your family and all aspects of your life are very greatly tied to how much money you're making. And he's saying, like, no, it is to a point. But at some point, they become separate, and more money isn't going to equate to better and better family or better and better relationships. So you're right. Like, at some point, they do need to be separated, but a lot of the arguments that she was making is like, no, they're so tightly knit that you need to always be thinking about striving for more and who wants to settle, right? So yeah, I mean, I think we can have that conversation, and it's really important because, I think when we started thinking about this channel, right, we were talking about what do we want it to be about, and there are already a lot of channels that talk to you about like how to make money online, how to start an e-course, how to do drop shipping, like all of these different things. There's a million of them. So it's a crowded space. And the conversations that you and I were thinking of having that maybe are a little bit crowded, I don't know, but they don't seem to be as crowded, is conversations about, how happiness is tied, or in some cases, how it's not tied to money. But what's the relationship there, right? And so I think the reason why this fits in really well is because, I've heard stories of people having tons and tons of money. Maybe they took that drop shipping course. Maybe they did learn how to make a killing online or something. But I forget who it was. I might have been Tony Robbins,
Okay.
somebody in that kind of space, that thought leader type of space,
Yes, sir.
that was saying one of the worst things that can happen is to succeed. I think he was talking specifically about succeeding financially or in career and still being unhappy.
Yeah. I think Tony Robbins does touch on that. Yes.
Yeah, because the idea was if you haven't succeeded yet and you're unhappy, there's at least you're in that stage of like trying to grind and you're working for something. But from his perspective, being somebody that he always says, like, yeah, I get calls from billionaires all the time. To be somebody that's got everything they would ever dream of wanting and still being depressed, that's a dark place, because he said, where do you go from there?
Material
You've
things
already
they
got-
ever wanted,
Yes.
and then still being depressed or unhappy. Yeah. Well, those are my initial thoughts. That's what I think. I have written down here a few more thoughts, but should we go into it?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So, first, the idea that more money does not equal more happiness, right? I think whoever made the point, if you're making $20,000 a year, You're probably worried about bills. You're probably worried about stuff going on in your life. But do you think that that's the average adult person?
No, I don't think so.
I don't think so
I
either.
think I've heard different figures being thrown around. I've heard, for instance, like the average salary in the United States is like 50,000, 54,000, something like that. I could be wrong. We'll have to look it up, but it's not six figures. And, I think the poverty line is like 12,000 a year or something.
Something like that.
Yeah, so it's kind of like in the middle there.
So, who do you think is typically the person making $20,000 a year or less?
20,000 a year or less, I would say. I'm not sure like what minimum wage would equate to.
I don't know either,
Right.
but if you had to give it an age, in average, who do you think makes 20K a year or less? What age group?
I don't know, just based on my guess would be that it's kind of spread evenly across the board. I would say
if
it's
we start working in the U.S. at 16, 16 to what?
16 all the way up to retirement age.
You think that there's people in retirement, close to retirement age, that are making less than 20K a year?
I would say so, yeah. I mean,
I
that's
don't know that would be the average.
yeah, so I mean, statistically, like I don't know what the right answer is. Like what is the average person in each age group making? But I do think that it's important to be open to the idea that it's spread evenly across the board. Or not evenly. It is spread across the board. Like there are older people that aren't making a whole lot of money,
Yeah.
as well as younger people that aren't making a whole lot of money. I think about that specifically as being important because one conversation that often comes up a lot is conversations about like minimum wage, for instance, right? And I come from a very conservative family, so I hear the conservative angle all the time. I've heard it my entire life. And that angle is that, well, if you're older or you're not a teenager, you shouldn't be making that much money. That's your fault. Like you need better skills. There's something wrong with you. And so like we shouldn't raise minimum wage. We shouldn't cater to you because that job that's paying you 20 grand a year is not made for you. And even if you want to make that moral judgment, the fact of the matter is that it's happening.
Yeah.
So as a society, collectively, like what do we want to do about it, right?
Yeah.
So that's why I think it's important to realize that
Yeah.
my guess is that it's
I just
spread.
did the math, and if in California minimum wage is $15, 40 hours in one work week is full time, right? Times 52 weeks a year is 30,000, 31.2. So let's say 30. Right?
Okay.
So even if you're working in California minimum wage, you're making $30,000 a year, right? But to answer my question from earlier, what ages typically make about 20K? CapitalOne.com actually says that on average, median average, annual earnings are actually at 30K.
Okay.
So if you're between 16 to 19, average is 30. 20 to 24 is 35. 25 to 34 is 50,000. 35 to 44 is 60,000. 45 to 54 is 60,000. And 55 to 60 and older is about 60,000 as well.
Okay.
So if on average, I'm losing my train of thought a little bit, but if on average people are making more than $20,000 per year, but Capital One says that it's usually between the ages of 16 to about 24 that you're on the lower end. Could you and I both agree that younger people are usually the ones who make less money?
Sure. Okay.
Okay. I don't see anything wrong with having those people strive for more and more money. Can I tell you why? Because because that's the point of their lives. They're supposed to strive. You
Oh,
know,
well, who? Based on their age or
based
based
on
on how
their
much money
age.
they're
Oh
making?
yeah, because if I'm making $60,000 on average, I'm about 45 years of age.
Right.
At 45, I would imagine that I already have a family. I already have kids, a wife, and supporting more than just me, right? I would imagine that between the ages of 16 to 24, however, I don't necessarily have a family or kids or anything, and I am supporting just myself. So somebody like Jedediah, who is speaking to a certain audience, I would imagine that she is speaking to those younger people who in my view should be striving for more, should be striving for that Maserati and that house on the beach and everything that comes with wealth.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I don't see a lot wrong with that.
Well, I think they were both in agreement on that part, right? Because he was saying, like, yeah, if you're making that little amount of money, sure, go ahead. Like, money probably is a big issue for you. So strive for more. They were talking about 70K or 80K per year.
Okay.
Now, let me ask you a question, like, would that change? Like, does your thought process change if we're talking about that amount per year?
There's a lot we have to agree on first, right? So I'm younger making 80K or I'm older making 80K.
Let's just say, for the sake of picking one, let's say younger. So you have
Okay.
all the time to strive if you want to.
Then I say strive. I say if you're 20 years old and you're making 80K, I say get the fuck out there and make some more. That's what I say. If you're in your mid 40s, going into your 50s, bro, focus on your family a little bit. Maybe at that point you already have a husband, you already have a wife, and you're already down that road, right? I say 80K, you're good, it's fine. Can I encourage you to strive for more? Yes, I still will. The reason that I would is because even if you're just okay, there's always something else you can do.
There always will be.
Yes, sir. I'm in that close to that salary, right? And I still strive. I am currently married, and I plan to be for a long time, at least. And uh, uh, um, but I still want to strive for more. Because with the salary that I have, I'm sure that Gabby and I can sit together and figure out how to buy a house, how to start saving and looking into our futures more, right? But why not strive for more?
Well, I don't, first of all, I don't think, like, for instance, on his side of the argument, Destiny's side of the argument, I don't think he's arguing that you should not strive anymore. The argument that he's making is you should just be more contemplative about how much you want to strive. That's it. Like, that could,
If
the
that is what
answer
he's saying, okay, I agree with
I mean,
that.
that's how I perceived it, right? Like, didn't see in his argument that, like, no, once you're making 80K, like, stop caring about money.
That is what I understood.
That's not what I understood. Like, I I don't think he usually talks in extremes that way, but the argument to me was that if you're making that amount of money, you're already covering your basic needs to even live. And you're probably, in most of the country, right? Like, in the majority of the country, you're able to afford, like, a decent middle class lifestyle. So, doesn't mean you should stop striving, but it should mean that you are in a place where you can now start focusing on just being a better human being, because you're no longer in survival mode, basically.
Moving on from that, I think we came to a good understanding, you're younger, making less, strive. You're younger, making more, strive. You got time. You're older, making less, fucking go. You're older, making about 80K, strive, but be careful. Is that a good understanding?
Yeah, I guess so.
I like it too.
I mean, but you started by saying like if you're younger, strive.
Yes, sir.
And I mean, I guess the argument that I'm trying to make is like it's like sure, go ahead and strive, but that conversation isn't like detailed enough.
What we have to summarize it, right? So
Yeah, but that's what this whole video was about, was like the nuances there. Like on one hand, you have a community of people that's saying strive, like, and we talked about this before, but it's like, hey, buy my course. I'm going to teach you how to become a multimillionaire by the time you're 30. And what do? They'll show you like all of their cars. They'll show you their mansion. Like that's the hook to get the fish.
Yeah.
You want all this stuff, right?
Yes.
You want this big house?
Oh, yeah.
And another house in Florida?
Definitely.
And then 5 cars? Like then do what I'm doing because, and dude, there was this thing on, I think it was on Instagram or something. Like you'll find it posted everywhere. There's this one streamer, YouTuber, I don't know what he does mostly. But, there's all these clips of this one dude that was saying, like, I think he said, if you're in your 20s and you're a man and you don't have a Lamborghini, you need to seriously reflect on your life. Like, what are you doing? Because it's so easy to get the Lamborghini. And he got a lot of crap for that.
This conversation is one of the ones that I wrote down, and I'm more than happy to go into it now.
Oh, the one that I just mentioned?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the thing with that is like that starts to enter a world where you're telling, particularly with that, like the guy that you're talking about, like he's telling young men, dude, if you're not rich, like something's wrong with you. You need to work harder. You need to be able to get these things.
I think you mentioned them
because there's a deficiency.
Yeah.
And I think that is not the healthiest approach to take. Specifically, if we're talking about young men and like what are the issues young men are facing.
For sake of conversation, what would you tell someone then?
What would I tell them?
If you don't want them to hear, you're worthless because you don't drive a Lamborghini yet in your 20s. What else would you tell them?
Well, I mean, it's not that I don't want them to hear that. Like they can hear whatever's out there, but my argument would be that that's such a blanket statement that doesn't really help the majority of young men hearing that statement.
So what do you tell them then? If not that, go make money, go get a Lamborghini, otherwise you're not going to be happy. What would be your message to them?
I mean, as unsexy as my message would be, it would just be think really hard about what makes a fulfilling life. Does a Lamborghini make a fulfilling life for you? Like if it genuinely does, my answer to that young man would be like, then go get your Lamborghini. I don't care. It's not my life. Like, go do it.
I think it's putting myself in, say when I was 21 years old, right? Putting myself in that mindset, it's very difficult for me to answer that question.
Putting yourself in which mindset?
In the mindset of my 21-year-old self, right? The question, what do you think makes a fulfilling life? At 21 years old, I have no idea. I don't know how to answer that question.
Well, and maybe none of us perhaps do, but I think at 21 years old, it would be great to have somebody tell you, like, yeah, maybe your answers won't be refined yet, but start thinking about it. Have some incorrect answers at first, sure, but like start thinking about it.
Well, let's assume that the argument of strive for that Lamborghini is one of those wrong.
Okay.
Isn't that a good start though? Like, isn't that a great fucking start? Because you're telling a young person, strive for a Lamborghini. You don't have one yet, go fucking get it, right? I think that's a great place to start. You might not land there, 95% of the time. Earlier, you were saying you want the big house, you want the Lamborghini and everything. Mm-hmm. And I kept saying yes. The reason is because, of course, I do. And should I keep striving for it, I'm going to land somewhere in the middle, right? Do I want to reach that end goal? Of course, definitely. Even if I don't, because I was striving for it, I'm going to land somewhere in between there, and I want that, right? Now, uh, uh, um, I've never gone into one of these courses. Follow what I'm doing, and you're gonna be fucking millions and everything. I've heard it, I've seen it, and somewhere in me, I said, it's I don't. This is a path I don't want to follow.
Okay.
Right? Have you ever?
Not a course like that where they were specifically trying to get you in for those reasons.
Yeah, me either. I don't know what it's like, but I think that it does bring the opportunity to create millionaires and wealth for a few people.
Right.
But I would almost ask what their success rate is. You know what I mean?
Sure. I don't think most of those courses really care about their success rate.
But it'd be interesting to find out what it is.
Yes, it would be. And maybe that was a false statement. Maybe they all care deeply about it, but from what I've seen, and let me say I have been to a course. It wasn't marketed as like, here, if you want all of these things, come to my course, like materialistic things. At least I don't think it was. It was a real estate course. It was a Robert Kiyosaki one, and it was like I was interested in real estate investing, so I thought like this would be something good to learn about. If you want to call that materialistic, I guess maybe you could make that case. But for me, it was like that sounds like a good way to build wealth. I wasn't necessarily sold on like very specific material things like a big house or a nice car. When I got there, there was value to the course. The guy that was teaching it did start to shell out a lot of those like tactics. Like he would talk a lot about how he bought these Louis Vuitton luggage sets when he goes to travel. It's a business expense. He bought this nice car. It's a business expense. Like he was throwing out these flashy things to make you be like, ooh, I want that. Like this is, yeah, because the next step, of course, is like, hey, this was just an introductory thing. You got to now pay $3,000. You'll have a private coach. Somebody's going to teach you exactly how to do this. They're going to go with you all the way so you can have all this stuff. Like they call them a funnel, right?
Right.
You pay a little bit of money up front to go to the initial course, and then like, okay, it's a few thousand, but you're going to invest this few thousand because we're basically going to like hold your hand and make you a millionaire.
Right.
And of course, and to entice you with that, you're looking at all this stuff like, wow, you can buy Louis Vuitton, he can buy these like $3,000 suits, and he's wearing it. Like he's flashing it in front of your face because that's what they know most people like, they want that. But when I see that type of stuff, to me, it's like, I think about what is the bigger problem that I mostly see in the world around me. It is not that not enough people can afford Louis Vuitton. That's a big problem that we need to solve. The problems that I see is like people aren't emotionally intelligent. People haven't dealt with their past traumas. Like it's psychological stuff. It has nothing to do with like, oh yeah, if you want to be happier, you gotta get a Lambo, like, or at least strive to get a Lambo. Because until you're striving to be a multi-million-dollar drop shipper, like, what are you doing with your life? Like that's not the biggest problem.
Drop shipper.
Yeah, that's not the bigger problem that I see in the world.
I agree with you. I love the book Emotional Intelligence. I think we've discussed that book in the past. I'm going to agree with you on this. To tell somebody a Lamborghini is going to bring you happiness, you should not tell people that, man. That's fucked up. That's not a good thing to tell somebody.
Why?
You know? I think that a Lamborghini can bring happiness to some people. I don't think happiness comes from a Lamborghini to the average person, you know?
What do you think does bring happiness to the average person?
Not having to worry about anything to pay for.
Anything to pay for?
Yes, sir.
Like, what do you mean by that specifically?
Anything.
Not having anything to worry,
Yes, sir.
and until you never have to worry, like you won't be happy.
Yes, sir. Definitely. That's what I think. Is until the time where you're worried, I can't see happiness there. See what I mean? Like, let's say I had to worry every month. I had to worry about whether I'm going to have the rent money. How much happiness can be there? Every month I have to go to Costco and worry about how much is it going to be? Can I pay for this? Should I take some items out to make sure I can pay?
Yeah.
Like,
But I think we're starting to get in a conversation that they were having, where what you're saying, Destiny's response was, well, yeah, I mean, if you're struggling to pay your rent, like this conversation's not for you. If you're making 80K a year, you are not in that position.
I think the difference is that word is worry, right? Because all I'm saying is to tell somebody that a happiness will come when you buy your Lambo, it's fucked up. I don't see a lot of truth behind that. What I do see a lot of truth behind is make enough money for you to get rid of your worries. I see a lot of happiness there. Can I tell you one of the reasons why?
Sure.
It was one of the topics that I wrote down that we kind of skipped over and went into this one, but here goes. You've heard of food stamps before, and you know what they are. You've heard of programs like Section 8 and affordable housing and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Right. Well, in a previous video that we made where we talked about what we learned from our families, we briefly touched on the topic that my family heard other families talk about credit cards. And then my mom and my dad said, don't use credit cards at all, because if these people are using it, we probably should stay away from it. Right? You remember that topic at all?
Yeah.
So can I touch on those people a little bit more? Here goes. In the community where I grew up, there's a lot of people. I want to say the majority of people who live off of subsidized housing. You know, I'm not saying I don't like the program, and I'm not saying that I disagree with the use of the program. I'm not saying that at all. What I am saying is that growing up, I visually got to see how programs like those keep people in poverty. It's set up that way, you know. In an outside perspective, you know, coming from wealth and coming from a place of I want to help, it says, well, we just, you know, there's certain people that need money to pay their rent, to pay their groceries, to pay, you know, basic necessities, electricity bill, gas, all that stuff. We should help. That's a good start. That's a good starting line, right? However, when you go down the path of and you follow that tunnel, it says, okay, well, we're going to help them now. You know, these people need money. They need finance. They need, you know, all sorts of help. How do we do it? Oh, okay. Well, if you're making $100,000 a year, you don't qualify for the program. You know. Oh, if you're making $12,000 a year, oh, you do qualify for the program, definitely. You know. So families will go to enroll for these programs, and they are literally asked for every finance piece that they have. They gotta see their bank account, taxes. They gotta see everything that has to do with finance, and on a monthly basis have to go turn it in. Boom, here you go. You know. So what I witnessed and what I saw growing up is that the families who were on these programs, they do everything in their power to not go past the allowable limit of money that they can make in order to qualify for this program still.
Okay.
You see what I mean? So I don't know how to say this in better words, and if it sounds argumentative or you know rude or just in any way negative, please know that I don't mean it this way. But how much faith can we place on these programs still? You know, if their ultimate goal was to help people in poverty, why are they allowing people to use the program in a way that maintains their poverty level?
That's a good question. Yeah, that's a really good question. I don't know exactly how, like, let's say the Section 8 program or the people that run it would describe their goal, or if they would describe it that way. I would think that one of the goals, if not the goal, is to make sure less people are unhoused. So that is devoid of any moral judgment. Like our goal has nothing to do with like, oh, should you strive or should you not strive? Should you stay below the poverty level? Should you go above the poverty level? If that was indeed their goal, which kind of would make us sensible, it would be sensible to me. Well, then their goal could be simply met by showing you, well, these people have a house. So, I mean, what they do with their lives after that is up to them. We just want a society where less people are on the street. And you and I have to admit that that's an issue,
Yes.
right? How you take people off the street can be something up for debate. But one thing I think everybody would agree on is that society as a whole feels less healthy to us when we see our neighbors like literally sleeping in a tent on the sidewalk,
Yeah.
right? Even if it doesn't like directly affect our lives, like that's not a sign of a healthy community,
Yes, sir.
right? So that combined with the idea that as long as your basic needs are met and you're not in survival mode, as long as those things are happening, then that's kind of in some cases enough. Like you don't necessarily need to be thinking about striving so much. You need to be thinking about how to fix problems internally. Then I would say like maybe those programs are accomplishing that. Maybe. And I mean, we don't need to get too deep specifically into the topic of government assistance. But yeah, let's just say that if the goal was to make sure people aren't on the street or less people are on the street, and if you gave them a house, they have food stamps, they have other programs that they can rely on. If that means that they don't need to be so much struggling for money that they start doing desperate things, then maybe that's a net positive for everybody because it takes the pressure off of their back.
But I think that they are doing desperate things, right? A part of this kind of rant that I went on that wasn't mentioned is that part, because they have to meet the requirements of this program, meaning they have to be under a certain poverty line. They will have to go to extreme measures to make money under the table, as they say, which means that they do have a job that pays them quite a bit of money, but they ask for it in cash. They don't deposit it into the bank. They don't do the normal things that they would with a paycheck because they can't let these organizations find out that they have it. Otherwise, they don't qualify for the program anymore.
Okay.
And oftentimes it is desperate measures that they have to go through because they still got to meet their basic necessities. The program doesn't offer everything that they need. It offers assistance, but it doesn't offer every part of the assistance that they need. So even with the program, they still have to work for more. even with the program, I'm sorry, because of the program, they have to kind of work outside of the system, if that makes any sense. And one of my thoughts in to I think it was Jedediah's point, how much faith can we still place on these three-letter agencies? You see what I mean? Like, there's a lot of them. There's a lot of them, and with the umbrella of help, but you start digging a little bit deeper, and you start to uncover a lot of how these kind of programs and three-letter agencies keeps people in poverty. What I'm saying is, strive for more, and as you get older, maybe be a little more careful, but please strive for more. And I'll
Yeah.
give you
Well, again, I don't think there was ever an argument that said don't strive for more.
sure.
That's not any point that anybody's trying to make.
Yes, sir.
I think the point is not like don't ever strive for more. It's just about striving for more, and more money is not everything that you need to be happy. That's the point. And so going back to something that you were saying earlier, like what would you tell, somebody that's young that is already making a decent amount of money? Do you tell them like to go for the Lamborghini, or do you tell them something else? I would say like try to be a well-rounded human being. Money is only a small part of that.
And some would argue that, can you be a well-rounded human being without money?
Absolutely. I mean, I think all you have to do is look around the world, and do you see cases of people that don't have a lot of money, or in some cases, like in remote parts of the world, where they literally have like basically no money, and are they happy? Like, yeah, they exist. Are there billionaires that are very unhappy? Yeah, they exist too. So to me, that just already points out that, okay, it's not everything. It's a part of it. We can argue about like how much of a part of it is, but we need to start at that starting point where it's like, yes, it's not 100% of what makes you happy. There are other factors to being a human being besides how much paper you have that brings a happy life.
Yes, sir.
So I would tell somebody that's young, like, yeah, don't stop striving. Like, go strive for more if you want. But please don't forget that you can become a multi-millionaire at some point, and if you did not work on the fundamentals of being a human, which the fundamentals of being a human is like the fundamentals of being an animal. It's not making money. It's finding a mate, building relationships, the sense that you have of yourself. Maybe some would say like a sense of spirituality. Those things don't need money. Money helps them, but they don't need money. Those are very like innate animalistic type of things that human beings need. So I would just tell that kid not to forget those things.
Right. To that point, yes.
Yeah.
For sure. Personally, I don't own a house yet, and I want to. Of course I do. I think that it's difficult for me to follow, a message that says just strive for Lambos and money and this. But it's hard for me to see why it would be wrong for someone to do it,
It's not. I don't think it's necessarily wrong for somebody to do it. I would say it's unhealthy to do it at all costs or at the expense of other more fundamental human things.
that create happiness. Yeah.
Yes. So again, this is where the nuance comes in. Like, nobody's saying don't strive. We already established that. Go ahead and strive. And by all means, a Lambo brings happiness, but it's at the end of the day, when you're on your deathbed, like, are there going to be some people that think like, oh, I'm dying, like I'm so happy I bought that Lambo? Like, yeah, maybe. I don't think that's the majority of people though. I think you can have 5 Lambos, and it's more likely, this is my guess, but it's more likely that that person that's on their deathbed is going to be thinking like, I shouldn't have focused so much on those Lambos. I should have been better to my kids. I should have been better to my wife. I should have kept up with the friends that I stopped talking to because I was on the grind so hard. Like, I should have done these things. Like, that to me seems, again, this is my guess. To me, that seems like it's the more likely outcome of a human being when they're faced with their own mortality, not an extra Lambo. So again, it's not like you shouldn't strive. It's just like there are so many other things about being a human that I would argue are more important, especially if you've already made it to a place where you're not starving, where you do have a roof over your head. So in this case, like maybe 70, 80K a year, pick whatever number you want. But as long as you're not like physically, I'm stressed because they're going to come after me because I haven't paid my bills. Like that's a whole nother conversation for another audience.
Yes, sir.
But yeah.
Those are all the points that I had written down. Should we close off with some, comments?
I guess just to tie it all up, like regardless of what you feel, I think these are important conversations to be had because there are so many parts of being a good, healthy human being, a fulfilled human being.
Right.
So whether you choose to strive or you choose not to strive, like this is all part of the money perspective conversation.
Right. And just like I think they said it too, right? But I'll say it for both of us. I think that both you and I are in a pretty good place financially, emotionally, with the relationships that we have, and I wouldn't change any of it. Do I want more? Yes. Am I happy where I am? And am I happy if I stayed here? Definitely, for sure.
That's awesome, man. All right, well, that's a great place to end this. Hope you got something out of this. This was the Money Perspective. My name is Brandon.
I'm Eduardo.
And we'll see you next time.